Hello guys, it's good to be with you here again. Man, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. If I don't say this, then that wouldn't be me. For subscribing to this channel, for sticking to this channel, for liking the videos. I see all of your comments. Thank you so much. So on my last video, we spoke about introduction to pattern drafting, and today we'll be diving deeper, and that would include dart and dart manipulation. So let's dive right into it.
These are the tools you'll be working with. You need a pencil and an eraser as a beginner.
This is a tracing wheel with spikes.
I'll be using the marker, but just do well to use a pencil. I'll advise you use a pencil so that if you make any error, it can be easy for you to correct it. So this is a T-square. These are French curve for the armhole region and any region that needs a curve. A straight ruler, a tape rule, and our pins. And if you take notes, this particular one doesn't have any sewing allowance at all. By the time we want to transfer this pattern on our fabric, we would need to add sewing allowance to every part, the side seam, except for the center line, because that side will be on fold. But every other part, the darts, the neck, the shoulder, the armhole, and the waist line, we will need to add sewing allowance to it. I hope we're clear on that. So we'll be drafting exactly what we have here, and then afterwards we're going to manipulate the darts to go to the armhole line, the shoulder, and anywhere we want it to go to. So let's start. First thing you want to do is to start with a beginning line. So as you can see, this paper, there's a long edge and there's a short edge. So I'll be using the short edge as my shoulder area. So all my vertical measurements will be coming from this region downwards, and my horizontal measurements and circumference measurements will be coming from this region here, sideways. So we're going to rule a straight horizontal line here. And we're going to rule a vertical line at the side. So I'm going to name this horizontal line our shoulder line. Our center front line. So the next thing you want to do is to take all your vertical measurements. I mean the vertical measurements you took from your shoulder to waist. Shoulder to bust point. I'm going to make a straight horizontal line. The next thing you want to do is to mark your bust line. And how do you get your bust line? If you're going to place your tape from the shoulder, if you're going to be measuring the bust line from the shoulder area, you divide your bust measurement by 5 and add 1.5 to it. On my last video, I said divide your bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5 to it. But that would mean you'll be measuring from the shoulder slant downwards. But now we're not measuring from the shoulder slant downwards. We're measuring from the shoulder line, directly from the shoulder line. So what we do is to divide our bust measurement by 5 and add 1.5 to it. That would give me 8
3.
And you rule a line, a horizontal line on that point. Next, we divide our shoulder measurements. That's our shoulder width divided by 2. And that will give us 7.5. I'm going to mark 7.5 here as well. And I'll connect it downwards. Now, I'm going to take 1 inch down on this is our armhole line here. I'm going to take 1 inch down for the shoulder slant. Now for the neck measurement, there's something you can do to get your neck width. The standard is 3 inches. But if you want to get the exact neck width of anybody, what you do is to divide the person's bust measurement by 12. So if I'm dividing this bust, the bust I have here is 34. If I divide it by 12, it's going to give me 2.8. So I'm going to mark 2.8 from the center front line, and I'm placing my tape from that line, and I'm marking 2.8. Whatever I mark here, I'm going to mark it as well for the neck deepness. I'm going to connect from this point, this shoulder point. So this point is the highest point of the shoulder, and this point here is the lowest point of the shoulder. That's the shoulder edge. You use your French curve to curve the neck area. And then the next thing you want to do is to mark the midpoint of the armhole. This mark we just made is our chest line. On this line, what you want to do is to measure your chest width divided by 2. So the chest width I have here is 13, and if it's divided by 2, it's going to be 6.5. If you don't know how to measure the chest width, what you can do is whatever you have on the shoulder. So the shoulder width of this measurement is 15. So what you want to do is take 2 inches away from 15. That's going to give you 13. If you take 2 inches away from the shoulder width measurement, it's going to give you the chest width measurement. And then you now divide that measurement into 2. So, for example, shoulder width here is 15. If I take 2 inches away from 15, it's going to give me 13, which is the wideness of the chest from the left chest to the right chest. Now, because we know that this line is on fold, we'll need to, when it says on fold, it means it's folded into 2. So we need to divide that 13 into 2. 13 divided by 2 is 6.5. So that's why we measured from here to here, 6.5. Now what you want to do next is to measure the bust measurement divided by 4. So the bust is 34. If you divide it by 4, it's going to give us 8.5. So that measurement should be here. So now the next thing we want to do is to connect these marks with our French curve. So from here, from this point to this point, we'll connect like so. And then we take the French curve upwards. Make sure that this French curve does not go below this bust line. So I'm going to be indicating all the names of this line. So this line is our bust line. This line is our nipple line. It's our bust point line, but I would name it nipple line so that we understand that the bust point line is different from this bust line. So instead of me putting bust point line, I'll just put it as nipple line, just for us to have understand what the bust point line is. And this line here is our waist line. On this waistline, you want to divide your waist circumference by 4 and then add your dart. You know, I said we're not adding any sewing allowance to this draft. Any style you want to make for this particular measurement, we can always build from it and add our sewing allowances to the new draft. So the waist circumference is 29 divided by 4 is going to give us 7.25. That's 7 1/4. And then the darts, we're going to add 1 1/4 dart to it. So this is where 7.25 is. So if we add 1 inch, this is 7.25. If we add 1 inch and a quarter to it, it will be somewhere around here. So we connect from this point here to this point here. And because we know that this place is on fold, let me write fold, on fold, so we don't forget, on fold. So we have to always divide the horizontal measurement by 2. So the nipple to nipple is 7. So divided by 2, we'll have 3.5. So I'm going to measure 3.5 on the nipple line. Now I'm talking about the nipple line, not the bust line. So on this nipple line, we place our tape from this center front line and mark 3.5, which is half of the nipple to nipple measurement. We'll also measure that same measurement on the waistline. And then we connect with a ruler. From this waistline, we measure 2 inches upwards and mark that point. Now from that point, we're going to come out by 1 inch and a quarter, which is here. From that point, we'll connect it to this bust area. This point to this point, we're going to connect it with a ruler, like so. And then from this point here, we'll connect it to touch the waistline. Just make sure you're connecting it to the waistline. Now we know that from here to here we measured 3.5. So I'm going to take away 3.5 from my tape. From here to here, 3.5. That 3.5, I'm going to place it on this edge here and mark quarter of my waist circumference. So quarter of my waist circumference means the waist circumference measurement divided by 4. So the waist is 29. That's the waist circumference. If you divide it by 4, it's going to give us 7.25. That's 7 1/4. So I've minused what I have here, which is 3.5. I've taken it away from the tape, 3.5. So I want to mark 7 1/4. So 7 1/4 will be here. And so I'm going to mark from this point to this bust point. This is our dart. What you want to do next is from this point here, you come down by 3/16. I'm going to make a video on how to read your tape and your ruler. I'm going to just mark 3/16 from my ruler here.
And I'll do the same on the other wing of the dart. With a French curve, smoothing out from this area to the new mark you just made. Do the same at the other wing. One thing you should understand is that the opening of this dart at the waist can be transferred to the shoulder area, as well as the armhole area coming to the bust point. Also beneath the armhole, measuring from the bust line upwards 2 inches, it can come from that area to the bust point. It can also come from this neck area coming to the bust point, and from the center of the neck at the center front line coming to the bust point. Also from the center front line or the side seam, as well as from the waist center front line. So the thing is, anywhere the dart is coming from, it must connect to the nipple point. That's the bust point. So I'll be going right ahead to connect from all these points to the nipple point. To get the center of the shoulder slant, we measure from this point to this point and bend the tape like so. We mark that point. And then we connect it to the nipple point. From the bust line, measure upwards 2 inches on the armhole area and connect it to the nipple point. Measure from this point to the highest point of the shoulder and mark the middle point. One method you can use to transfer this waist dart to any of these other darts is to close up the waist dart and open up the other darts. But on this video, we'll be learning how to use the pivot method in transferring the darts from one area to another area. So it's time for us to cut our block. From this point, you come down by 1 inch, and you do that for all the lines, all the darts. This is because you're trying to avoid having a sharp nipple point. From this point to this point, mark the midpoint, and from this midpoint, connect it downwards to the legs of the dart, like so. When sewing, you're not going to sew from this. That's this mark, you're not. Instead, you'll be sewing from this one. And we'll be cutting directly from this inner dart. If you're yet to subscribe, don't forget to click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell for more tutorials like this. Please remember there's no sewing allowance on this block. When we add our sewing allowance, it's going to turn to a pattern. So for now, it's still a block. I have gone ahead to get another piece of pattern paper because we want to manipulate this dart from the waist dart to the shoulder dart. So we can actually do this on any of these dart lines you can see. And this method of transferring darts is called pivot method. So we have different methods that you can use to transfer your darts from one area to another area. But this particular one is a pivot method. So what you want to do next is to trace out the center front line. And also this area of the waist. Square this exact point like so. To transfer the dart to this shoulder point, you trace out from this center front to the shoulder point. And to this point, you trace out from this point. Do the same for this point as well. This applies to all the darts coming to the bust point. So this opening here will be here. So we're tracing to where we want the new opening of the dart to be. Position that. Make an indication on that shoulder point. Use your pin to secure the nipple point. This is because we'll be pivoting the block bodice. In layman's term, pivoting simply means turning to another direction with the midpoint still secured. Don't pivot towards the side seam area. Instead, pivot towards the center front area. While pivoting, watch out for the other leg of the dart. It should touch on the first leg of the dart, which was indicated as seen. So let it touch. Once it touches, you stop pivoting. Let's name here B and this other leg A. So B should touch where A was touching. So from this new position of the dart, the shoulder dart, continue tracing out the other side that wasn't traced initially. Trace out the armhole curve. Let me go ahead to use a marker so we can see the tracing clearly. So never mind, I'm basically just using my marker to trace out the pencil I used in tracing out the center front initially. And so I'm still tracing out all the pencil lines so we can see it clearly. So this area, I would blend this area with my French curve. Indicate the nipple point on the new paper with your tracing paper. Connect from this point to this leg of the dart and from this point to this other leg of the dart. From this point, go up by 1 inch. Make sure it is located at the middle of these two lines. Mark the middle. Connect from this point to the left leg of the dart. Do the same for the other dart leg. Note that you'll be sewing from this newly drawn dart. It's time for us to cut our block. For emphasis, we did not add sewing allowance to this block. That is why we are referring to it as a block. But as soon as we add sewing allowance to the necessary areas, this block becomes a pattern. Note that I won't be cutting to the dart leg exactly for now, because I would want to put an arc. This is because when I connect these two legs of dart together, there's going to be a funny shaped arc at the top. So I need to give room for that. And that's what I'm doing right now, drawing the arc. I'm cutting right through that curve I just made. Fold the two legs of that to touch each other and trace out with a tracing wheel. Now cut through the punctures of the tracing wheel.
So we've successfully transferred this dart here to this dart here. So please take note that when you want to sew the dart or when you want to cut the dart, you fold this side at this towards the center front. You fold it, the dart, like this. That line, not this line here, but this one here. Fold and stop here. Now move it towards this other side of the dart, like so. So let me secure this with a pin. You can see we are already having our bust point area popping up already. So you can see it has successfully converted this flat paper into the shape of the body. That's the contour, and giving it a space for the bust to fill in. So that's that. So what we just did now, you can do it to the neck dart. You can do it to this dart here, the armhole dart, the dart coming from the center front, this particular dart, or this one here, or this dart. Any areas. That's how dart manipulation works. And basically what all these darts do is just to ensure that it flows along the contours of the human body. Another thing you should take note of is the allowance, sewing the dart allowance, because don't forget that this is where you'll be stitching. You'll be stitching on this line from inside. When you're sewing, you stitch like, you put like this on your machine and stitch and stop here, not here. That's why we have this second line ruled. I hope we can see this clearly. So once you stitch here, make sure that the allowance inside goes towards, let it face towards the neck. That's the center front area. Let it not go backwards to the armhole area. Please take note. This is very important. I want to really emphasize on this for beginners. I had said it earlier, but I want to say it again. There is no sewing allowance on this region. So if you, for example, if you want to use this pattern to make, to cut your fabric, make sure that you add 1/2 inch or 1 inch sewing allowance on the side seam. For beginners, I always advise add at least 1 inch. Don't add 1/2 inch because you might not be very good with cutting if you're new into cutting and pattern drafting. So add like 1 inch on the side seam. Then for the waist, 1/2 inch is fine. 1/2 inch here too as well is fine. The armhole, 1/2 inch, following the curve of the armhole and extending to the 1 inch that you've added by the side. So it's like you're coming out by 1/2 inch and you're marking the 1/2 inch round following the curve of the armhole. Then from here you add 1 inch and you mark it downwards. Then from here you add 1/2 inch. So it means, and from on your shoulder part too, you're adding 1/2 inch as well at the top, and you're ruling. You can get any style from this block. So because this doesn't have a sewing allowance, I just taped the darts together without any allowance, just for you to see how this flat paper has created a space. You can see the vacuum for the bust region, for the breast to fill. So that's what pattern drafting does. It kind of creates that shape for the body.
So after closing up both darts on the shoulder and waist region, this is how the block looks like. Please like and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching.